Where is he?
Where are you? Skull Rock. Do you know it?
Hello, everyone. This is Stacy over at the Skull Rock broadcast. I am joined by.
Hello, this is Megan. Welcome back to our Stranger Things podcast. Welcome back to the show. We are excited, as always, about our episode today. We're continuing with our Lovers Lake deep dives, and we are on chapter 4 of season 1, which is called The Body. I literally just watched the episode, finished less than an hour ago, so
It's fresh in
my
the
mind.
brain. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But we both watched the episode this week, and we're super excited to talk about it because, once again, great episode. But before we get into that, how are you doing, Stacy?
I'm doing really good. Happy Star Wars Day.
Yes, that's so exciting. So I was like, oh gosh, I have to watch Stranger Things. I can't watch Star Wars. But I sat down and turned the TV on, and of course it was on the TV
Of
because
course.
I watch Big Bang Theory a lot on TBS, just when I'm eating dinner and stuff. And that's what channel was on. And it was like a marathon, I think, all weekend.
Which one was on when you turned it on?
Episode 4, A New Hope. And it was at the part where they're rescuing Princess Leia from the Death Star. So I was like to Leia, oh, Leia, they're going to rescue you.
Yeah, see, you're like, that's your namesake,
Yeah, all year, because she's a year. We've had her a year now. When people ask her name, I'm like, oh, Leia, like the princess.
I love that.
So they go in the trash compactor, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right after they rescue her. And I was just like, you know how that monster reaches up and wraps and pulls them down? I was like, this is so much like the vines and the Upside Down.
Oh my God.
I had never really kind of made that connection before.
You're absolutely right. It's been years since I've seen A New Hope. I will admit that's one of my least favorite ones.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
I know when you told me that that's one of your favorites, I was like, okay, girl, all right.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, I think this is when you and I kind of were like, wow, we're kindred spirits. And this was long before, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. I know what you're going to say.
You know what I'm going to say, because I remember it was last year.
1 year ago.
1 year ago today. And I swear to God, at the same exact time.
Literally the exact same time. It was uncanny.
We both posted the iconic family video interview scene where Steve mentions, his favorite Star Wars is the one with the teddy bears.
Teddy bears.
And I remember you actually texting me or messaging me and going, did we just post the same scene at the same exact time? And I'm like, oh my God.
I know. I knew you were my people after that.
Right? Which your edit is just so good because just the music in the background and just, I don't know, Steve's startled expression of him going, top 3 favorite movies. Just so on the spot, so panicked. But that will forever
Keith
be.
is like, did I stutter?
Oh, family video, Steve, I'm telling you, that look, iconic.
Yeah, and I had to post on our podcast page today the scene that, because we've been rewatching season 1, and so there's the first scene where he kind of has the little Yoda figurine and is making the Yoda voice, and I just love Mike. He's so chaotic.
So funny. It's so funny looking back, seeing the posters for the movie and then all the little references and stuff because, Star Wars, I guess okay, so Return of the Jedi was 83. So yeah, that came out the year that season 1 takes place. So for little nerds like ourselves and the kids, those movies were huge. And I do love that later on in the season, when they're hearing Hopper going on the radio, Dustin's like, it's like Lando. And he just won't stop.
Yeah, I found a YouTube video that has all the Star Wars references in season 1. I'll have to send you the link.
Ooh, I'm definitely going to have to watch that.
It was definitely a good video. So yeah, super exciting. May the 4th be with you.
what's going on with some of our top favorites?
Oh, our big three. What's our big three doing? Well, Joseph Quinn is rocking a buzz cut.
Yes,
So
he
that's
is.
been all the rage everywhere. I think he looks great. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. But I think, he had to shave his head for the war movie that he's doing.
Yes. Yep.
And he's been doing press for A Quiet Place, day one,
Mhm.
in London with Lupita and the cat, who apparently is named Schnitzel.
Schnitzel. I just die over the photos of him holding that cat. I'm like, this is adorable. I love this.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so funny that we've talked before about how we love that Lupita is like a cat person.
Mhm.
And it's not her cat, I guess. It's like the actor, like the cat actor from the
Yep.
movie. But they are just holding it. And it's such a well trained
I
cat because
know.
you can't really train cats, but I guess they trained to this one. So
Yep.
it's really funny and really cute. But yeah, and then Joe Keery is just, continuing to blow up the charts, and we're so happy for him. Still waiting on news about new music or a tour. Fingers crossed, absolutely. And what's Maya doing?
Maya, actually, she's been doing a lot of press for Wildcat, which was directed by her father, actor, director, Ethan Hawke. And that looks like a really fun project. And she, in a couple of interviews, was talking about like the creative process and how, they really like from the time she was a baby, they loved creating and making things, even if it was painting or whatnot. So I just really like that she kind of grew up in that atmosphere where her, both parents are both artists, but they kind of did different collaborations, starting from an early age, let it be a painting or short films to now actually working together in the film industry, which is just so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
She's just such a fantastic actress, and, like, I just, have recently, watched her in other projects besides Stranger Things, but she's got it in her DNA, so definitely the very, very talented young actress, and I guess, she was at C2E2, which was a Chicago convention, and it was just so adorable seeing her meeting fans, and there was a cute little photo op where like a guy was dressed as a Demogorgon and she jumped, and everybody who met her said that she was literally the sweetest person on the planet. So we are manifesting. Let me grab my crystal. We are
Yeah,
manifesting.
we need Maya at the Upside Down convention. Let's get into this episode because it was a good one,
Yes, it was.
and we have a lot to talk about. I have to admit, I did not have a chance to watch Stand By Me, but I did like look up the synopsis of like the body, and
Yes.
I guess that's like the whole railroad tracks thing is like definitely taken from that.
Yep.
And just like the fact that the boy died and the kids are trying to like figure out what happened, I think is like the premise. But
Yeah,
yeah,
like, you
it
could
was
definitely
interesting.
tell, Stephen King was a huge thing that inspired the Duffer Brothers, and the short story, The Body, it's a very good short story. The movie Stand By Me is iconic. It's directed by Rob Reiner, and it's a coming-of-age film about 4 childhood friends that do kinda remind me of the boys in Stranger Things. They're kind of misfits and outcast, and they find out that there is a boy that is missing who supposedly has gotten killed on the train tracks. And it's them spending their like last, few days of summer to go try to find the body, to almost like get famous. But along the way, they kind of learn a lot about themselves, and maybe they realize this isn't this big party because they are going to find a body. No, definitely something when you do get the chance, definitely check out, but
Yeah,
it just goes
I'm
to show
definitely gonna
you.
watch it.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great, much like Poltergeist when you get a chance, but with Stand By Me, it shows you, when you catch lightning in a bottle with finding great child actors. That was something that happened in that 1986 film, and what happened in this show, because we actually really get to see some great acting from our child actors in this
Yeah.
episode.
And I think was Corey Feldman was one
Yes,
of them. Was he one of the Frog
he
Brothers?
was.
Okay, yeah, I thought so. I thought it, and then I don't really know. Well, the only reason I know Will Wheaton is because of Big Bang Theory. Yeah, because he like plays himself on Big Bang Theory.
That
But
is
I guess
amazing.
he was in Star Trek, I think.
Yes, that was his big thing
Yeah,
growing up.
yeah.
Yep,
Which again, I only know because of Big Bang Theory, but
that
it's
is
fun.
fantastic.
Yeah. So I'm excited to check that out. But I also, okay, so I love that again, me on Star Wars Day. I'm like, oh, we're getting like the starry sky again, which the first episode opened that way.
I
So,
thought of that instantly. Yep,
and I'm like, and that's, how Star Wars opens. It's just like the starry sky.
yep.
So I thought that was kind of funny.
And I like that it starts, I believe it's when Hopper is looking around with the police and they're going through Joyce's house because clearly she claims that something was in there or somebody or something. And it's almost like they're humoring her and they're looking through. And I like how eerie that like moment is when Powell like shines the flashlight along with Hopper against the wall that supposedly, and we saw the Demogorgon
Mhm.
crawling through, and he goes, Chief, is this the wall that she talked about? And you see that the wall's solid, there's no damage to it. And I don't know about you, but something definitely like, on Hopper's face, it looks a little uneased, I guess.
Yeah, so I was thinking that the power must have gone out at the buyer's house because they were like walking around in the dark with
Yeah.
the flashlights, which, yes, was really cool cinematography wise. But I was like, I guess with like everything that happened and the flashing of the lights, like the power went out. But
Hmm.
you can tell that Hopper wants to like believe Joyce.
Yes.
And she's like begging him. She's like begging him to believe her. Jonathan is really upset because he basically thinks his mom is like having some sort of psychotic break. But this is the part where I really like this part with Hopper telling Joyce that after Sarah died, he also saw her and heard her. And he said, like, he realized that it was in his mind and that he had to pack it away or otherwise he would fall down a hole.
Mm.
That's
Yep.
my little Alice in Wonderland connection. But yeah, he's saying Joyce is like, no, you're talking about grief. Like, this is something different. And she's like begging him to believe her. And he wants to.
Yeah, you can
So,
see it in his face, and I really liked that before he kinda has that heart to heart with her, when it shows and it's such a great, like, panning, like, it must have been on a circular dolly going around them with him telling her, what they believe happened, that, Will had crashed on his bike and, wandered to the quarry and the earth gave way, but it sounds only almost, like, distorted, like it's
yeah,
underwater, like, almost like, I don't know, Joyce is either in shock or she isn't quite listening because she's still trying to process what she saw
right.
earlier, you know?
Exactly. It's kind of like you are in Joyce's mind and like hearing it from how she's hearing it because
Mhm.
she's not really taking it in because she's like somewhere else, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get your favorite song.
Remember how long that took me to figure out what that was? And I'm
Yeah.
trying to,
And
like,
you were like singing it.
trying to shittily sing it. Sorry, Joy Division.
But Hopper leaves and he tells Joyce to get some rest and to go to the morgue tomorrow. And he doesn't actually leave. He just ends
Oh,
up sitting in his truck, which I think is one of like our favorite moments of him as well, because he cares so much. And this is another thing, like, one, I'm curious about their history because we know based on the play, I think that they're going to have more of a shared history.
yeah.
And we've talked about that before. But also, I'm so curious if the thing with Sarah was more than we know are aware of.
Yeah.
So we have those kind of like suspicions that there might have been some sort of like connection to everything else with Sarah, and we're not sure, but maybe. But then it's a cool shot too when I guess Joyce is trying to decide whether or not to go into Jonathan's room.
Mm. And just at that perfect cue, it almost sounds like chimes in the song going through, and it's her
Yeah.
in the hallway, like, oh my god, so well shot.
And I also love that Jonathan is laying in his bed with headphones on, so it's almost like he's the one listening to that song,
Mhm.
which we know he does like Joy Division because
Yeah,
that song is Atmosphere by Joy Division.
yeah.
But then she goes out to the shed and gets an axe. So I guess she feels like she needs some protection.
Yeah, I like that it's, instead of, like, going in to, like, comfort her son, you can see even with kinda like the evidence mounting that, from what it looks like right now, her son may in fact be dead, but instead, she's still determined to believe that what she saw was real, and she's going to keep watch and protect herself, and she sits on the sofa with this axe, and you just see it in her face. She's beyond exhausted. She's probably beyond terrified, but she's sitting in the darkness, keeping watch because from at least what she believes, she saw something that was real. It cuts to Ted and Karen. They're both holding hands in the den, watching the news report of,
Yes.
what had happened. And I don't know if this was a reference or not. It could have just been a common last name, but O'Bannon could have been after the director of Return of the Living Dead. I just, noticed
Oh,
that.
okay.
But supposedly State Trooper O'Banion was the one that found Will's body, which I don't know about you. I never really quite paid attention to that subplot and how, later on Hopper talks to the guy. But I was just
Yeah.
like, right away in my head, I'm like, I'd be wondering too, what was a state trooper doing out there,
Yeah, so Ted asks if he should go down and talk to Mike. So they are concerned.
Yeah.
They know, I mean, Mike came home sobbing, so
Hmm.
they know Mike is upset about his friend. But I think it's funny because if they had gone down there, like they would have seen 11. Like
Yeah.
so I guess she would have like hid in the little
The jig is up.
tent. But but Karen is like, "No, he'll come to us when he's ready, just give him time." But I did think it was interesting. I was trying to, again, like, hear what else they were saying on the news report, and it was interesting because I'm pretty sure it said, like, initial inquiries. I couldn't understand whether it said that they did think that there was foul play or that they didn't think that there was foul play.
Yeah.
But then they also mentioned that there was someone else who drowned at the quarry 7 years ago. They start to mention and then it cuts to Mike in the basement, but they say that this is not the first time that
Oh,
someone has
shit.
drowned at the quarry.
Okay.
They do cut down to the basement and Mike is mad at 11, but somehow she made it back.
I know. I
Um,
was like, you must have ridden double with somebody. I doubt it was Lucas. And I like
yeah.
that Mike is looking through Will's drawings.
Yeah, it's so sweet, like
Mm,
and I like to, like, focus in on the drawings and see, like, if there's any, like, clues or whatever, but I love that there's, like, a dragon because then we get,
mhm.
like and the fact that the drawings are at Mike's house, like, did Will do them there or did he make them for Mike?
I
Like,
know.
because that's so sweet because, in season 4, he makes him the painting of the party with the dragon,
Did you get
and
that time capsule like Stranger Things box?
no, 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 I'm excited to see yours.
Oh my god, get ready. There is in the season 1 like kind of like packet, there's actually and it's on like, regular paper. It's that painting that Will did of like Will the Wise doing the like, the fireballs, but they look like cabbages. And
Yeah.
like, it just goes to show you, and that's something that comes back later on too, that Joyce, along with his friends, know what a good artist he is for his age. So, it's like you said, there's a dragon, and, you wonder whether or not he left them, or these mics. It really pulls on the heartstrings because
Yeah.
as he's looking, 11 is kind of like fucking around with the radio. And I like that Mike is like, you lied to me. Friends don't lie. What you did really sucks. You hurt me, Oh
Yeah.
my God.
I know. It definitely pulls on the heartstrings for sure. I did like another one of the drawings was like the party as their D&D characters. So I don't know a ton about D&D, but I know that Mike is a paladin.
Mhm.
Lucas is a ranger, Will is the wizard, and Dustin is their bard. So those are all of their like classes.
That's really
Yeah,
cool.
which I think especially in season 1 that kind of like matches, but I
Yeah.
do think that like Will being the wizard and having magic, like Elle ends up being their mage, which is also a magical kind
Yeah.
of class, and that's going to come back in season 5 and allow him to be like powerful in some way.
Exactly.
But yes, so she's fiddling with the radio and ends up finding it's Will singing his Vecna song, basically,
I know.
of the Clash, "Should I Stay or Should I Go?" And, I mean, Mike is so shocked and excited to
Mhm.
hear that, but then once he tries to, like, call Will back on the radio, they kinda can't hear it anymore,
And if you
so
notice, like, her nose is bleeding a little bit, so it looks like she kinda, like, used her power to be able to get to whatever range that was to reach the upside down, and
yeah.
he looks like, "Was that?" And she just looks at him, and with a sad smile, she just simply says, "Will."
Yeah, yeah, and she was determined to kind of find him for Mike because I feel like she understood how upset Mike was
Yeah.
and really wanted to kind of, like, prove that she did know that he was there, and Mike was then able to kind of, like, accept that he wasn't dead.
Mhm.
So I think it's interesting how, like, Mike and Joyce are both the ones that are, like, determined to, like, not believe that
Mhm.
Will is actually dead.
Yes. So we do our opening titles, and just yet again, like, I know this is every episode, but I do love that it almost looks like the screen, especially when it's black, that it's like the old tracking on an old VHS tape. Like, it looks like
Yeah.
old film, and they made it look retro for a reason, but it just seemed to, like, jump out at me really during this episode. And like we, discussed, the body is, the other name for the short story by Stephen King. And we open up on a lake, but right away I'm like, what fucking
Yeah,
lake is this?
I know, because you're at the buyer's house. I thought the exact same thing because I'm like, Lover's Lake? I feel like we should put that as, like, a shot for our for our
Yeah.
Lover's Lake deep dive, but, like, I I guess they're kind of implying that the buyer's house is near a lake, but I don't think it really is, as far as I know, but who knows?
I do love this shot though. It's kind of eerie and creepy, but you see Joyce is asleep on the couch, most likely fell asleep from pure exhaustion. And you hear
Yes.
her hearing kind of like an echoey, distorted,
Mom, mom, mom,
mom,
yeah,
mom. And then she, for a split second, she opens her eyes. And I actually paused it because I had to admire the makeup.
yeah,
And it's Will, and Will looks like he looks dead, basically. He's
yeah,
pale. His eyes, which I never noticed, are extremely bloodshot and red,
ooh,
and just his eyes, there's circles underneath them and stuff. And it's only like a millisecond, like a frame. And, then she's jolted awake, and it ends up being Jonathan waking her up. So she was
right.
dreaming. Or was
Right,
she?
exactly, exactly. Like,
Mhm.
because we know he's there, But then we go back to the Wheelers. So it's really kind of just like back and forth from the Byers to the Wheelers for a bit for this episode. But Mike is also waking up at home and he's in bed and he's, lying to his mom that he needs to stay home from school.
Did this remind you of the scene from E.T. when Elliot's like faking sick?
Well, I haven't seen E.T. in like a long time, so I don't know it that well. But yeah, and I feel like there's just so many like movies and TV shows that I watched as a kid.
Yeah.
Like, what is the one where somebody tells you that you can put like a penny under your tongue and it'll make you have a fever? Like, I don't know where that just came from in my mind.
Damn. You reached into the back of the memory warehouse for that one. Because what I remember with E.T. is Dee Wallace Stone walks up to Henry Thomas and he's got, the blankets pulled up and she walks out of the room for a minute and he puts the thermometer. You can see he's resting it on the hot light bulb of his lamp. And then when she comes back, he sticks it in his mouth. So just the fact that like Mike is fully dressed underneath that blanket and he's
Yeah.
laying there and he is selling this performance. And
Yeah.
Karen, yet again, I'm telling you, like, she's the MVP. She's going, like, I just have to drop Nancy off. So I guess, she's driving her to make sure she's okay. And
Yeah.
she's like, I'm going to check in with Barb's parents, which would make sense. And she goes, I'm going to take Holly with me. Do you want to come with me? You can bring a book. And then she does like something that just brought me back to my own childhood. She's like, you can even go to the video store and rent whatever you want, even R-rated. And it's just, what a good mom. What a good mom.
I know. She's so sweet.
And I love that their Dark Crystal poster is in the background. And he's like, no, I think I'd just rather stay in bed today. And, just really selling it. And she says, okay, are you sure you're going to be okay by yourself? If you need anything, call Dad at work. And as soon as she leaves, he's like, bye, which kills me. And then he throws the comforter back, fully dressed, and he jumps down. And we had heard 2 episodes prior that, the one he can get the clearest signal is Lucas.
Right next door. Yeah.
Because he's right next door. And I love the whole, like, Lucas, like, kind of ignoring it. You see he's kind of distraught, thinking his friend's dead, laying in his bedroom. And I love the whole, Lucas, I'm going to just keep, doing this until you answer. Lucas, 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 Lucas. I love that. Love, love, love that.
Yeah, again, classic middle school boys for sure. Yeah. But I guess do Lucas and Dustin, I guess, have to fake being sick also because they don't go to school, right?
They might like be given like a free pass, because
their friend died.
Their friend died, and we all know like Claudia is a single mom as far as we know. So like she might already be at work.
Yeah.
But
well, actually, this is the season where we haven't gotten to it yet, but I'm pretty sure at the funeral there's like a guy with Claudia.
Ooh,
so
Claudia. Ooh.
I know we'll have to like kind of try to figure that out when we watch I think it might be the next episode with the funeral, because people are like, well, what happened to Dustin's dad? Because there was a male figure like standing with them in season 1, but we don't really know. So Lucas does eventually answer the walkie and Mike tells him to like get there.
Yeah, I love it. Like, I'm not in the mood. And like, does this have to do with Will's funeral? No, screw his funeral. Go get Dustin.
Then we go to the coroner's office.
Oh,
and
this was good.
I love the cameo in this scene because the coroner is Sean Levy.
Are you kidding me?
Did you know that?
No.
Stranger Things trivia that you didn't know.
Girl. So he's the one that like takes the sheet off.
Yes. That's Sean Levy.
You are fucking good, girl. I love that right before that moment too, Hopper's kind of like waiting in the waiting room and he asks like, what's taking so long? And the secretary says that things have been a bit chaotic without Gary, who must be the usual coroner. And
we see him later.
You see him later because Hopper talks to him. Yeah. And Hopper looks a little like confused and he's like, well, what happened to Gary? And she goes, oh, they sent him home last night. And he goes, "Well, who did the autopsy?" And the secretary kind of shrugs and says, "Somebody from state." And right away, you can see Hopper's like, huh. But it shows, them, Jonathan and Joyce IDing Will's body. And, right away, Jonathan, this poor kid, he like almost like gets sick and he has to look away. And you see Joyce, she just doesn't look convinced. And she even says, like, there's a birthmark on his right arm. Can you show that to me? So clearly, like, what on one side you could say she's in shock. She doesn't want to believe it, even though her son's corpse is like literally right in front of her. But then another part of you, the one that we know all too well, she also knows something isn't right.
Yeah, and I like how, for one, she does ask about the birthmark on his arm, and I'm
Yeah.
assuming that it's not there. No,
Oh, you don't
because
think it was there?
you don't see them show. They cut back
They
to
cut away.
Hopper and Jonathan, so you don't actually see him show her the birthmark. Then you cut back to Jonathan and Hopper talking in the waiting room and how Jonathan's talking about how he's really worried about his mom, but that
Mhm.
she's tough, and Hopper's like, "Yeah, she is," and Jonathan's
Yeah,
like, "We'll be okay." And she comes storming back out saying that it's not him, but you don't really see exactly what happens with, like, why she's determined that it's not him.
because it could go either way. Either she saw it, she's still convinced, like, even though the evidence has mounted,
Yeah, I don't
or
think that he had the birthmark
he didn't
because,
have it,
I
and
mean,
it's
how would they have known that? Like,
they're the
they
government, man, tinfoil hats, y'all.
because she runs out and she's like, "It's not him." I don't know what,
That thing
that thing
is.
is. Yeah, and then Sean Levy runs after her, is, like, wanting her to sign the
Mhm.
paper, and he's like, "Ma'am, ma'am, ma'am."
Ma'am. Good job, Sean Levy. And I like that she refers to this corpse as a thing, and she does it several times. She
Yeah.
refuses to even refer to it as a he, just as a thing, and she storms out.
Right. Oh, also, just, I mean, if our listeners aren't sure about this, Sean Levy is the one who directed this episode.
Yes, yes, yes. He is a common director of, in my mind, some of the best episodes throughout all 4 seasons, and he's also
Yeah.
the director of Free Guy, I believe.
Yep, and I think he's done a lot lately. He did All the Light We Cannot See, a movie on Netflix,
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I think Deadpool? Did
Oh,
he
I
direct
think you're
that?
right. Yeah, I think you're
Yeah,
right. Yep.
with, what's
Ryan
his
Reynolds.
name? Ryan Reynolds,
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, so I mean, he's very talented, a very talented director.
Mm.
So, yeah, I think I might have seen, like, an interview of him saying of him talking about, like, how they just needed somebody to do it, and he decided to do it.
I do love there was I think it was like opening day or something at Fenway in Boston, and, both Joe Keery and Sean Levy, they were given, like, official Red Sox uniforms, so there's a famous photo of him, and it says Levy and Keery, and, I think, Keery would did a pitch and stuff, and it was just really cool to see them someplace so iconic that has to do with Boston. Cut to the high school, and there's that famous alleyway that we see again in season 2, and there's Steve and Nancy, and, clearly, he's kinda asking, he's like, "So you went back to my house, like, the next day?" And she's kind of filling him in on Barb being missing, and he kinda questions the whole, because imagine how this sounds. He's like, "So you thought you saw, like, a man or a bear back there, and he didn't have a face?" And he acts like any normal 17, 18-year-old. And when, Nancy kind of lets him know that the cops are involved, he panics because he's like, this is really bad. And he mentions, okay, well, if you talk to the cops, leave out the beers. It has nothing to do with Barb. And, when of course, Nancy is like, I can't believe that that's the first thing you're worried about. And he's like, my parents are going to murder me. My dad is a grade A asshole, which, of course, with fan fiction readers, much like us, we're like, it's canon, you know?
ran with
ran
that.
with
Yeah.
ran with the Harringtons being dicks.
Yeah, the 3 little comments that Steve makes about his parents on the show, like, have a million
Or a
things written about
million.
Steve having bad
Yep.
parents. Very popular tag on AO3, Steve
Bad
Harrington has bad
parents. Yep.
parents.
Steve Harrington needs a hug. So I personally don't think it was that awful of a thing that Steve asked Nancy to do, but Nancy clearly emotions are running high. She's worried about Barb. So she's basically like, I can't believe you. And she storms off.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like absolutely exactly like you said. Nancy is just kind of disappointed in Steve's
Mhm.
reaction because she's very worried. And she's like, I am worried about my friend who I think this terrible thing might have happened to. And all you're worried about is your parents being mad that you had a party, basically. Like, I mean, again, you can kind of see it from both sides. Like, he's just a typical teenage boy. Why should he think that, like, something terrible would happen like this
Exactly.
if he's never been through something like that? But then again, like, he should be more supportive of Nancy if they're dating or
Mhm.
whatever. We cut to town and Joyce and Jonathan are arguing, and that's Jackson where they're filming. So you'll be able to see that little street that they're on. But I think that Joyce's line in this scene became very iconic
Mhm.
too. I think that they even put it like on the soundtrack with like, she's like, I'm determined to bring him
Oh,
home. Like, I'm not going to rest until I bring
yeah.
him home. And he's like, "Well, while you're talking to the lights, we'll be planning a funeral."
And I like
So,
that, she goes off in one direction, he goes back to the car, and he kinda tells all the townspeople that have kind of gathered around at the very public scene that they just caused, and he says, "Show's over." So,
yeah,
woo!
that was a good line. Yeah, like, "Come on, people,
Yep.
fuck off,"
Mhm,
basically.
mhm.
But we are back in Mike's
Yep.
basement. I feel like the amount of scenes that happen in this basement, especially in season 1, but Lucas and Dustin have made it over, and they're trying to get Elle to be able to, broadcast Will on the radio again, but she's having a hard time getting the
Mhm.
signal. And they're trying to figure out, like, Dustin's like, are you on the right channel? And Mike's like, I don't think it's about that. I think it's like she's channeling Will. And again, Dustin says it's like Professor X. So I guess is that
Yes, I
X-Men?
did like that little nod.
Again, I like latch on to any kind of like scene with like the
Mhm.
radio just because we don't know what's going to happen in season
Yeah.
5 with like they are like we need to get Elle to a bigger
Mhm.
radio and they decide to go to school because they have the ham radio for AV club, but I just keep thinking like, oh, well, we need to get Elle to a bigger radio. That's why they need to go to like
We're
the radio
station. Yep.
station.
We're
Yeah.
seeing a lot to do with radios, radio antennas, radios, big common theme throughout all 4 seasons, but we're seeing it really come back in style because, like the Duffer Brothers said, season 1 is going to really mirror season 5. So, I like
Yeah.
that when, Lucas kind of makes a good point. He's like, well, how are we going to get the freak into school with everybody? I mean, look at her.
I know, and they cut to Elle, and she's just, like, sitting there so
Looks like a
sweetly,
puppy
like
dog just staring up. And, we keep mentioning ET, but this is like the ultimate ET moment when there's the montage of 3 middle school boys who actually do a
giving her a
fabulous
makeover.
job doing a makeover, and I love all those memes of them being like, the strangest thing of Stranger Things was how they took that shitty $5 wig and turned it into a lace front, masterpiece. And they, even like Mike putting the makeup on her and Dustin trying on the wig first because it must be like for Nancy's like dress up days,
Yeah,
and they put her in
exactly.
this iconic pink dress and blonde wig, and I just love the music cue of her stepping out, and she looks like a, bunny ears regular girl, and I love that they go, "Wow, you look," and Mike kinda slips up and says, "Pretty," and then he realizes that
Dot,
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 dot, dot,
dot.
good, and I love her looking in the mirror at herself, and she actually really smiles because she looks, bunny ears normal, and she goes, "Pretty." pretty good. It's just such a sweet moment. My heart.
It's so adorable. And also, I just was like clocking Lucas's face looking at
Yeah.
Mike, and he basically like, you got no game. You got
None.
no
None,
game, man.
son. None whatsoever.
Then we cut to the lab, and we have the guy all suited up, Shepherd, and they're kind of like putting him on that
Wench, yeah.
chain wrench thing, and he's going through the gate. So we kind of had seen that in the last episode, them kind of setting up this whole
Mhm.
system, and we see them sending him in, and I think Brenner is like good luck
Mhm.
son or something like that. But I always think it's interesting that straight from this short scene, we cut back to the high school. And do you know what they're reading in Nancy's class before she gets
I was
called
trying to
out?
figure that out. What was it?
They're reading Heart of Darkness, which did you ever read that?
No.
It's like, I think Joseph Conrad. So I had to read it, I think, in like AP
Mhm.
English in 12th grade. And oh, I remember it's just like the most depressed. I think it's well known to be just like the most depressing thing you
Oh,
could ever
great.
read,
Yeah, that
basically.
sounds like a hoot.
And so it's very like dark and like shows like the dark side of humanity,
Mhm.
basically. So I think that kind of like showed like the mood though of like, some of the stuff that happens in the
Mhm.
show. But they call her out of the classroom to go get questioned by the police officers in the cafeteria. And I do like that her mom is there, because I don't love that they take Max to privately
Yeah.
question her in season 4 without a parent
Yep.
there.
Mhm. And just the way they go about it, almost and this isn't even the lab. These are just Paul and Callahan kind of being like dicks, but
Assholes,
yeah, they're
yeah.
just almost like gaslighting Nancy because they're like, well, maybe she was jealous that, you were with this Steve Harrington. You guys had a fight. She's like, right away, she's like, well, it wasn't really a fight, because now she's starting to think back on kind of how she treated Barb. And just the way, you see, Karen kind of looking over at her, and, they're like, oh, well, clearly something, happened. And they're like, oh, so you went upstairs to just talk. Was that before or after you changed out of your clothes? And I'm like,
I know. They're definitely being so
yeah.
gross and implying that they did something when she was
Hmm.
up there. The only like interesting kind of tidbit was that they told her that Barb's car
That
is
was something
gone.
I had never picked up before until I rewatched this episode because she's like, what do you mean it wasn't there? Wasn't there,
Mhm.
even though she had
Yeah.
found it previously, parts the day before. Hmm.
It's not for a little while that we go back to Nancy and her mom. I'll touch on it when we get there, cuz that was the first time I was kind of like mad at
Yeah.
Karen a little bit. Then at the station, this is what I said, we would see Gary, who I guess is the coroner. And I thought the interesting part of that conversation was that like Gary kind of was skeptical, like
Mhm.
Hopper. Like he was like, why are so many state troopers bringing this body in? And Hopper kind of presses him, like, what do you mean? Like, tell me more. And he's like, it was Will
Not
Byers, not John
JFK.
F.
Yep.
Kennedy. Yeah. Hopper was like getting confirmation of like what he kind of suspected, that there was something more
Yeah.
going on here. But then you see him turn up the news again, and they mention David
Yep.
O'Bannon that you clocked before, who was the state trooper who
Hmm.
supposedly discovered the body at the quarry. Yeah, then the boys ride their bikes
Yep.
to school through town. When they get to school, there's an announcement coming over the loudspeaker that they're having an
Yep.
assembly to honor Will
Dear
Byers.
God.
Like, But this is like one of my other favorite scenes from season 1, I think, is when they're trying to get into
Yep.
the AV club room to use the radio, and Mr. Clark finds them.
And it wasn't it that they say that she's Mike's cousin?
Yeah, okay, oh my gosh. So I just had like a brainwave when we so hear me out here.
Always.
So oh, well, he tells them that they should go to the assembly to, like, be here
Mhm.
for Will, and then that they can he gives them, like, the keys and tells them that they can use the radio after the assembly, which they were about to have, like, Elle unlock the door with
Yeah.
her powers, which I'm sure she
Yeah.
could have, but he clocks Elle, and he's like, "Oh, I don't think we've met." So he's like, "What's your name?" And it's funny because, I mean, Elle, like, didn't really, like, know what to say to that question, but now she was like 11, and they're like,
Eleanor,
"Eleanor."
I know.
They start to say, like, "She's my," and then I think Dustin or Lucas says cousin, and Mike's like second cousin or
Mhm.
something like that, but they determine that or they tell him that she's his second cousin, like, visiting or whatever. But, okay, what if she is his second cousin?
What?
Okay, so let's try to figure this out. If Karen
Oh my god, I love it.
is Alice
Yep.
and 11 is Henry's daughter, wouldn't that really make Elle and Mike
Could you
cousins?
imagine?
It's so Star Wars
It
coded.
really is actually, which is appropriate today.
And I guess I have Star Wars on the
You
mind
do.
today. They're twins and they kiss.
I'm dying, guys. I'm dying. Megan is in a galaxy far, far away, and I am here for it. The way that they are building stuff up and the fact that Star Wars is almost like a common theme, nothing would surprise me at this point, even though, let's be honest, if that was a reveal, my jaw would be on the freaking ground. My God. What did they say that she's from Sweden?
Well, she says the
Yeah,
bad
bad
place.
place. I love that. For 3 middle school boys, they think fast on their feet. Yeah,
Sort of.
kinda, yeah.
They can't really get all their stories
Yeah, I
straight,
love it.
but they're like, "Yeah, Sweden, it's really cold there. She hates it."
Sub-Zero. And I believe that Mr. Clark says that, they need to go to the assembly, but then they can, have the radio to themselves. And I love the shot of the doors like slamming open in the middle of it. And everybody just goes dead quiet and looks at them. And Dustin almost turning around going, abort. And Lucas is like, like, keep going. I do love that. Just so awkward.
Dustin's saying abort.
So good.
I, like, actually, like, laughed out loud at that. But they do go back to the Wheeler house, and I was not happy with Karen because she was like, "Nancy, you lied to the police." Like, what the fuck did you want her to tell the police that she fucked Steve
Yeah.
Harrington in his
I
bedroom?
mean, I'd be
Like,
announcing that
I
from the rooftops, but that's just me.
like, she's like, "You lied to the police," and Nancy basically says that, like, "I slept with him. What do you want me to say?"
She does actually prove a good point, Nancy, when she's like, "We slept together, and it has nothing to do with anything, it's bullshit." Because really, like, what does that have to do with Barb going missing,
It
you know?
doesn't. No, it doesn't, and, like, they're all trying to, like, make her feel like it does, which I was kind of weirded out that, like, Karen was on the side of, like, she should have been more truthful with the
Who are being
police, but,
assholes and
like,
creeps, yeah.
exactly. So, this is, like, one of the first times we hear Nancy, though, call her
Bullshit.
relationship with Steve bullshit,
Oh,
though.
Steve.
And it just sucks that, like, the whole start of her relationship with Steve was this traumatic time
Mhm.
period for her. She basically has viewed their whole relationship as
Yeah.
bullshit and him as bullshit.
It was almost like doomed from the start because of the circumstances
Yes,
that surrounded it, and I do
exactly.
like that Karen almost, like, sees how upset her daughter is, and almost backpedals a little bit. And she's like, no, you can talk to me, please, Nancy. And she's like, leave me alone. And she runs upstairs. And, for once, I actually have to side with Nancy. I'd be just as upset. And she slams the door and she kind of like, sits on her bed. And the torn up photograph of Bart that Jonathan took that she grabbed from the previous episode when, Steve broke Jonathan's camera. She's looking down at it and she starts crying, seeing the photo of Bart by herself on the diving board, legs dangling in the old pool. And that's when something catches her eye. So she grabs some Scotch tape, tapes the photograph together. And, it made me really think of the scene in season 4
with the Creel house,
which I thought was so cool. I'm like, look at you, Nancy, you little puzzle solver.
Yeah. Exactly. Nancy puts the pieces
there you
together.
Go. Yeah, literally. And that's when she sees something and it catches her eye right in the corner of the photograph.
I think it looks like Vecna, but we know that it was the Demogorgon because we saw like the Demogorgon head, like kind of like when Barb was sitting there. But yeah, so she notices something. She's like, what is this, basically? And then we cut to back to the lab. So Brenner and his team have kind of lost contact with this Shepherd guy. And then he comes back in and he's saying that he's one click south of the rift. And I had to look that up. Do you know what that means?
Click. Is that a mile?
It's a kilometer. Apparently it's US military slang for kilometers. Yep. He was describing like what he saw. So I guess basically he was in the upside down. And he was like, everything's still here, but it's covered in blood and looks like it's eroded. So, I mean, I'm assuming that that's kind of like where he was when he goes through this gate, right? Like into the upside down. And then he was like, there's something else in here.
Terrifying.
So, yeah, super scary. You can tell that he's being attacked.
Yeah, you just hear the noises, the growling, like they're struggling to hear him scream. And Bremer's like, reel him back. And they reel it back. And you see like basically the whole like wench, like the wire has been ripped out and it looks like there's blood on it and slime and other weird shit.
Yeah.
And there's no man attached to it. So not a good sign.
No.
So definitely has some real spooky sci-fi horror movie vibes to that scene. And you're starting to think, you're like, damn, what the hell is that thing? Clearly it's doing some killing, Oh, we go back to the middle school, right? During the assembly?
Yep. So they're at the assembly and they're sitting in the audience, which again, we get the call back to like the pep rally in season 4 with them sitting in the audience. But the bullies, Troy and the other guy, are kind of like
being assholes,
making fun of the assembly, being assholes, hecklers, and 11 clocks them and she knows. She's like, oh, mouth breathers. Like she knows that those are the guys that, were giving Mike a hard time. So when they all get down from the bleachers, Mike like confronts them, which
I do love. I think that's pretty messed up what you guys are doing.
They again continue to call Will derogatory names and say that he's better off dead, basically. And this also was reminding me of in season 4. It actually happens twice, but when Elle is being bullied and the circle of kids forms around them, both at the school and then again at the skating rink, because all the kids are like laughing. So it's interesting that like in this season, she's the one helping Mike stand up to the bullies, but then she actually has to end up dealing with bullies herself in season 4.
Don't even get me started.
She makes him pee himself,
which is
basically.
Fantastic. I'm one for sink to that level. Be the petty bitch. And you know what? Elle, you had the powers. You used them. And I just love how, like, what's his name? Troy? He's about to beat the shit out of Mike. Like, he's ready. Like, what did you just say? And then he just freezes. And he looks so scared, like, I have no control of my own body, and everyone's kind of weirded out, like, what the hell? Pisses himself. Everyone starts laughing. They're like, Troy peed himself. So humiliation, just fantastic. And you see Mike turn around because even Troy's little friend is like, ew, and walks away. And, the teachers are like, all right, let's break it up, and Mike sees Al do just such a badass, flawless move. You see that it was her because she wipes the blood off her nostril and just so smooth turns around and walks away. Flawless.
Yeah, it was
Flawless.
a great scene. Nancy goes to talk to
Yes.
Jonathan. So he's at the funeral
Oh,
home, kind of looking at
my heart goes out
caskets
to him
and
because you can see he's
yeah.
trying to almost like be the adult in this situation because he thinks his mom has lost it, has gone off the deep end. She's not taking care of this. So he's the one making these like impossible decisions, and Nancy goes to talk to him and shows him the photograph later on. And he's trying to figure out, like, what could have caused this. And I really do love that, she's like, yeah, I thought I saw this weird man. And she's like, she kind of realizes how it sounds. So she gets up and, he asked, he goes, what did he
Mhm.
look like?
Yep, and then she starts to say, like he didn't have and then he finishes for her, like he didn't have a face, and I love how, like,
Hmm.
spooky it is when she's like her acting, Natalia Dyer is great, and her acting in that scene, I feel like was
So good.
actually particularly good because the way she looks at him, she's like, "How did you
Yep.
know that?" Like, so that's, like, where they've been connecting over a few things with Will being missing, but this is where they kind of, like, connect over this, like, shared experience because he's realizing that she might have seen the same thing that his
Yep.
mom is seeing, and I think it's helpful for him to know that his mom isn't crazy
Hmm.
also. Okay, so I really like this scene. We go to the hideaway,
Which
which
I
for one
always thought
thing
was the hideout that Eddie mentions. It's not.
yeah, it's not, they're different. But it is really interesting that they're both called, like, the
Yeah.
same thing, like hideaway, hideout, but think about it because isn't Will also, like, hiding?
Ooh. Yep.
Yeah, so I just thought that those were interesting names and, like, the fact that they, like, have 2 bars in the same town named Hyde.
Hide. Yeah.
The first time I watched this, I thought it was like a flashback, like that
Oh.
he was because he starts talking about
Daughter.
his
Yep.
daughter, Sarah, winning the
Mm.
spelling bee, and I thought of you with your toothache today because apparently the word that Sarah won the spelling bee with was a fancy word for toothache, but I was like, "Wait, like, but his daughter's dead, like, why is he talking about his daughter?" And he wasn't in his cop
Yep.
uniform, and I was like, "Is this a flashback?" And then it's kind of like you realize that he's kind of
Hmm.
incognito and trying to get information from this O'Bannon guy about, like, why he would have been out there.
I love that he catches him in the lie too. He's like, "Aren't you famous or something?" And he goes, "Oh, you might have recognized me. I'm the guy who found that kid's body." And he's like, "Oh, what were you doing out there?" And he's like, "Oh, I was just on patrol, And he goes, "State run, right?" And O'Bannon goes along with it, and he's like, "Yeah." And then he goes, "Well, actually, like, I know you're lying. It's actually owned by the Slater."
Sattler.
Sattler Company, and he's like, "I actually know the owner, he owns a few private operations," and he asks him, he goes, "Why are you lying to me, man?" And O'Banion gets very defensive, basically like, "Stick your nose where it belongs, like, leave it alone," and kinda calls him, a dick and, throws his money down, is like, thinks we're ruining the game, and I love that right away, you just see Jim knowing what he has to do, and it cuts instantly to most likely behind the bar, him beating the shit out of
Yeah,
this guy trying to get information out of him.
and eventually he does kind of give him, like, the fact that they just told him he doesn't know anything and that they just told him to, like,
Follow
call it
him
in and not
to
get too
the and I love that he
close,
goes, "Not
like
too close to what?" He goes, "The body."
right. Yeah, exactly. So this like really sparks Jim like that there's something fishy about this, but also it kind of like the O'Bannon guy kind of seems
Mhm.
scared because he's like, you're gonna get us both killed because he can obviously tell that these people who told him to do this were shady. They probably
Oh,
paid him
yeah.
off or something. Like, and so then you see that people are watching and this car drives away and Jim like gets out his gun and
Yeah.
everything. But that whole interaction it's like a continuation of like Hopper just trying to figure out like what's going on. And it's like he's showing that he is taking Joyce
Mm.
seriously. Like because he's still looking into this even though like they found Will's
Yep.
body. Like it should be like I think the people at the lab thought that was going to be it kind of thing. And okay, he's dead. Like let's move on. But like Hopper is taking Joyce seriously and he's continuing to look into it and follow his instincts about the
Mhm.
situation. But then again, the rest of this episode has like a crescendo, like the last episode as well, because
Yep.
it gets really good. Well, we go back to the buyer's house just for a second and we see Joyce turn on the
Yep.
music
She's blasting the
and
music.
she's
Yep.
yelling for Will, and then they get Elle to the radio in the AV club room, and she has a flashback for one.
Yeah, the flashback is basically, Bremer's like, this is what we're going to be doing. You're going to find this man. He shows him a photograph of a random guy, and he says, and you're going to repeat back to me what the man is saying, like, those old nursery rhymes we used to do. So clearly, this is an exercise of her powers that she's done before. And, she sits in a room and she looks at the photograph.
So we just see the guy is actually down the hall in a room reading those words.
Actually, somebody that works for the lab doing the exercise saying
Yeah,
these random words. But I like that instead of her just repeating them back to Bremer, she actually transmits what he's saying through the
right,
PA system. And Bremer actually looks a little like, oh, okay. So it shows that she's able to actually like use her power to broadcast the person that she's looking for through radio
right.
or PA systems or speakers or
Exactly.
whatnot.
So it's basically showing what she's doing with Will. So she's finding Will
Yeah.
and she's able to like broadcast his voice that he's saying in that moment over some sort of radio. So she finds him at,
Hmm.
I guess he's at his house and the boys can hear them. And then I've been trying to like wrap my head around this scene. Joyce is yelling for Will. Will is yelling
Hmm.
back for his mom, and the boys can hear Will through the radio with Elle. I don't think the boys can hear Joyce.
I don't think they can hear, but you can hear them hear stomping, which made me think of that scene from Poltergeist. That
Ooh.
in the scene in Poltergeist, she says there's somebody here, and you hear loud stomping above them. So they can hear stomping. Clearly, something is approaching Will.
It sounded like this clanging, and that's actually what they
Hmm.
called it in the subtitles, but that there was, like, clanging. That starts, and then I was trying to figure out, is the fact that Will and Joyce can then both hear each other and that she can then see him through the wall, is that because of
Mm.
what Elle was doing at the moment? She kind of like pulled the two dimensions a little bit closer together so that they were able to kind of like connect.
Yeah, I actually have never thought of it that way before because it was like that was the thinnest the veil has
Yes.
ever been between both dimensions. And she hears Will, and he sounds
Yeah.
like he's in the walls. And she peels back the wallpaper, and it almost looks like this translucent, like
Right.
room texture, which
Yeah.
symbolism. And her child is on the other side, and you hear the louder clanging. And Joyce begs him to tell her how to find him. And Will cries, 'cause she's almost like, "Where are you?" And he's like, "It's like home, but it's so dark," which chills. And it's so cold and empty. And it cuts back to the boys hearing this, and they all
Yeah.
look fucking terrified hearing this. And Joy says, "All right, I need you to go and hide." And she promises him, like, "I'm going to find you." And the music swells up to that wonderful, wonderful cue of "She'll Kill You," which we hear in a later scene this season and season 4. And the wall like seals up almost back to like
Like drywall or whatever. Okay, so then she starts chopping into the wall with the axe, but the sound
yep.
that makes is very similar to, like, the clanging that they were hearing, and I was like, it
Oh.
was very, like, is this, like, time being kind of, like, wonky? Like, she was actually, like,
Yeah.
hearing herself banging into the wall. I
Self,
don't
yeah.
know. That was just, like, where kind of, like, my brain went with it, like, because the clanging, like, we didn't really get an explanation of what that clanging was, but then when she starts chopping into the wall
Mhm.
with the axe, it
It
sounds just
sounds
like
just
it.
like it,
So
yeah.
that was
That's
that
amazing, I
whole
didn't even
scene is just
realize that.
very cool, and I was just trying to, like, wrap my head around it.
And just the fact that, the radio catches fucking fire, Eleven's nose is
Yes.
bleeding, kinda like the smoke alarm is going off,
She basically passes out,
passes
I
out.
think, because then they're, like, wheeling her down the hallway.
She drains herself so bad because even when, Mike is like, "Elle, are you okay?" She looks like she's, fucking 1 foot in the grave. And like you said, the boys wheel her out, after Justin puts the fire out with the fire extinguisher. And just like as the music is like, kind of like coming down, you see poor Joyce. She has chopped a hole through the fucking front wall of her house and she can see out into her front yard. And it's just the most devastated look on her face because she came this close and she saw her son with her own 2 eyes, but she can't find a way to reach him and she doesn't know if he's in danger or not.
Exactly. And then we kind of get like a moment of calm because we're back in the dark room and Jonathan and Nancy are developing the picture, and it's actually kind of like a tender scene
Mm,
because they're kind of talking to each other, and she's like, "Have you been doing this long?" And he's like, "What?" And she's like, "Photography." And he kind of gives her a little bit of an explanation for when he was taking the photographs at the pool, because he's like, "It's easier for me to
yes.
observe people, and I can see more what they're saying through the camera lens than kind of like socially." So trying to like
Yeah.
explain to her his kind of like social
And I like
anxiety
that
and
she asks, like, "Well, what was I saying?" And I like that he actually goes, he's embarrassed. He's like, "I shouldn't have taken
yeah,
those. I'm sorry." So he does apologize and he does fess up, like,
exactly.
that was a little fucking weird, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, exactly. So they kind of had that was kind of like the
Mm,
reconciliation to that. Like, I feel like we're not, as viewers, supposed to like continue to hold that against Jonathan because they apologized. Like, he
yeah.
apologized to her and they kind of like she was like making light of it a
Yeah.
little bit, like, okay, well, what was
Yeah.
I saying? Hopper goes back to the morgue. I love this scene too. So also he goes to grab his hat
Oh
in the
my
truck
god.
and decides to leave it. And I love
Ugh,
like the
forgot
hat,
my
like
hat.
Indiana Jones. Yeah. And he's like, "Oh, this is my excuse to like go back and like
Did
try to
you
find my
notice what
hat."
book the guard was reading?
Well, I was trying to figure it out because Hopper says, "I love that book. That's a real nasty mutt."
Stephen King's Cujo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, oh, so goddamn good. It's about a rabid dog, a Saint Bernard dog, probably one of his better books. Well, they're all good, but one of my favorites. And the movie Cujo came out in '83 as well. It was the year of King, The Dead Zone, Christine, and Cujo came out all in the same year. So I do like that he has that moment. And he's like, "Oh yeah, O'Banion sent me down," and the cop is like, "I don't work for O'Banion." And you right away you see Hopper like, okay. And he just realizes he has no other, excuse. So he has to punch the guy out.
Yeah. So he punches him in the face, and then David Harbour in this
Oh my
scene,
God.
like, I mean, there's no talking, obviously, but just the emotions on his face as he does
Yeah.
this are just like you can tell exactly what he's thinking. He's like pulls the body out, he's looking at it, and he's like kind of like, you know, taken aback because it's like he's looking
Yeah.
at Will and it looks like Will, and just you can tell the raw emotion on his face, but then he kind of knows that he needs to like investigate further, and you can tell he's kind of like
Yeah.
disgusted with himself with what he has to do, but like he takes out his knife and slices down the torso, and it's stuffed, and he's just pulling out stuffing, and I'm just thinking about Leia tearing up a stuffed animal
I can't.
and pulling out all
Pulling
the
out all the
stuffing.
stuffing. Yep, all dogs are alike, I swear to God. And that was I remember when I first watched it back in 2016, I actually gasped because I was like, "Oh, what are they
Yeah.
gonna do now?" Like, this was the biggest, like, "Oh, shit" moment so far because you realize that they've staged this, and Joyce was absolutely right, Like, even though we
Yep.
saw, Will on the walls, this was kind of like Hopper's kind of like, oh shit, because we didn't mention it, but in the dark room, they enlarged the photographs and
Oh,
they
yeah, yeah,
see
yeah.
off to the side is the thing that
This, like,
could be
monster.
Vecna
Yeah.
or the Demogorgon. But I love that, Jonathan says this bone chilling line. Oh my God, my mom was right. She's not crazy. And, like
Yeah.
we said, it's him realizing that. And then in the next scene, it's Hopper realizing that this confirms
Yes.
everything. Joyce is not crazy. There's something much bigger going on. So, whoo,
Yeah. So kind of everybody's on board at this point. Like everybody, the boys have all heard
yep,
Will now. They know that Will's not dead. Like Hopper knows that Will's
mm-hmm,
not dead. Jonathan and Nancy know that there is some sort of
yeah.
monster, and that Joyce isn't crazy. And Joyce has literally seen her kid. Like, so they all
And for
know
some
now.
weird reason, I always thought that was the end of the episode. I always thought it like cut to black as soon as he takes out all the stuffing.
Yeah.
But no,
But there's 2 little kind of, like, things that happen after that. So, Lonnie shows
yes, which
up.
I thought was it's interesting because Joyce's reaction, I think she's just so emotionally drained and she might, especially like her expression seeing the outside, part of her might really truly think, am I really going crazy? You know? And,
Yeah.
her piece of shit ex shows up because I'm sure he was, probably contacted that his son was dead. And she just like it's so heartbreaking too, because it's at night and he's like, "What the hell happened?" Because he sees the big fucking hole in the middle of the house. And she just goes, "Lonnie," and she breaks down in his arms as he's holding her.
Yeah. And it's just, like, any source of,
Comfort.
like,
Yep.
comfort. Yeah, and it's, like, it's hard to, like, watch her, well, it's interesting to, like, watch her go to him for
Mm-hmm.
comfort, because it kind of gives you some insight that even though their relationship isn't good, they must have had
Something.
something at some point.
And what's the final scene?
And the final scene is Hopper has left the morgue. He's back in his truck and he pulls up to the fence around the lab. And you see like the signs that say like H&L and everything. And he takes his big bolt cutters or whatever and starts just snipping
Snap
the
in the
gates.
gates, baby. And cut to black.
We're left with that knowledge that he knows that that they have something else to do with it, and he's going to basically sneak
Yeah.
in or try to at
Woo!
least.
But what one hell of an episode because like you said, so much happens and it's almost, like those realizations with all three storylines, the boys, Jonathan and Nancy, and then Hopper realizing that Joyce isn't this crazy hysterical mother who is in denial that her son's dead, that this was all staged. So one hell of an episode.
Yeah.
Loved this one.
Yeah, and I guess we're like halfway through the season. That's like the
Hmm.
halfway point. So Yeah, definitely such a good season. And the mystery is there, the like suspense, like the horror of it all.
Mm,
Nice to kind of focus in on just that one
yeah.
episode, like we've said before. I think for filming updates, we don't have a ton of new
Hmm.
information. Haven't had like a lot of like new leaks or anything. I did see some photos of the set that they were filming, which were leaked, but they were filming at the
Yes, I
farm
saw that.
again. So I am very curious to know, like, or to find out once we see the season, like what this farm, what the significance there is going to
Hmm.
be. And then you said that Dust or Gayton has gone on record saying that they'll be filming now until
Yep.
January.
In
So
2025, which I get it.
yeah,
There's obviously a lot going on with this. It seems like it just keeps taking longer and longer, but I know you and I feel very similar about this. The Duffer Brothers, the production, the actors, everybody, they know what they're doing. And it felt the same way with COVID, delaying production twice. And we had to wait for what seemed like forever. And look how well the wait was with, worth the wait with that one. So I keep telling myself it's going to be worth the wait and the hype is just going to keep building and building and building. So, fingers crossed we'll get it in 2025, but we know that there's all post production and all that. So we just have to kind of wait and see. But yeah, it got pushed back another month. So
you wanted to talk about some merch. I do know the one
yeah,
thing that you want to talk
I did.
about,
I
right?
did. So Funko, kind of made a little like teaser a few weeks ago saying that there was going to be a brand new Steve Harrington that was going to come out. And for a little while, there was a bit of a rumor that it could be a beat up Scoops Ahoy Steve, which I do hope one day we'll still get. But then it's so funny because the episode where Hannah Sarah was with us, we kind of, threw it out there. We manifested it. We called the Four Corners. And we're like, man, why hasn't there been a damaged Steve Harrington?
With Eddie's
I mean,
vest.
iconic with, the chest hair just running wild and free. And lo and behold, that's what it was revealed to be. And he was available on the Hot Topic website. And there were some really great coupon deals. And you and I actually talked about it last night. We both used the coupon and we had it delivered to our local malls because altogether with the savings, it came to like $11.
Yeah, it was like, this is awesome.
And I literally looked at all my Steves who were all in front of my TV and I literally went, "You're going to have a little brother soon, boys."
How many teams will you have now?
Let's see. So there's 8 there, 9, 10, 11. There'll be 11 official Steves. I feel like,
Wow. You have all of them?
I have them all. I even have the Comic Con exclusive scoops.
Yeah.
So I just made it my mission on this planet to own every single Steve. But I would love to actually,
Yeah.
once finances are better, do some custom Steves, definitely.
Yeah. Do you have all of the Eddie Funkos as well?
I do. Except for this is the only one I don't have because they're not released in the US yet. You know how they did that box set of Dustin, Nancy, Robin, and then the Eddie, and they're all battle ones. The Eddie one is
Yeah.
blue and red and like upside down colors.
Yep.
I love those colors, and I would love, love, love to find him, but it's only available in like Germany, and like I even humored maybe even ordering from Germany, but they won't even ship to the US as of right now.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to be patient and wait. But as of right now, I do own all the Eddies, all of the Steves, and I'm just like, wow, 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 wow. And
Yeah.
just the fact that he's going to be wearing Eddie's vest as as us talking, we're like, well, that's just sensational. So definitely
Exactly. And I
pumped.
mean, it's something I might wanna get signed,
I
so
was
we'll
actually going to
see.
ask you. I was like, I was trying
Yeah.
to pick Brandy's brain, and I'm like, yeah, it's so hard to try to narrow down what you want to get signed. And Joe Keery,
Yeah.
obviously he's known for Marmalade and Spree and, all these other great projects and his music. But then you you can't not get something Steve Harrington signed. So
Exactly.
definitely.
Yeah. So I have to decide.
I got two really cool packages. One was my 11 from season 1 with the Eggos. I keep telling myself I wanted to get more season 1 and season 2 pops, and I got this one off Macari for $4. I was like,
Oh,
steal.
man, can't beat
And
that.
then my friend Mark actually gave me a Scoops Ahoy pillow, which I didn't even know they made until I saw Brandy had one at her house. And I was like, where the hell did you get that? And I guess it was just part of Netflix's promotional stuff for season 3. So my friend Mark actually had a couple of them and he was like, oh, I'll give you one. And it came in the mail yesterday. So it's with all my other Stranger Things pillows to go along with my Stranger Things living room. But yeah, keeping my eyes open. I believe our Steves are going to be shipped in the next couple of weeks. So
Yeah, I think we'll have them by the end
I
of the
can't wait.
month for sure. Yeah,
Is
it's
this
gonna
your
be
first
cool.
Steve Pop that you have, or do you own one?
No, I have 2. Do I have 1 or 2 other ones? I think I have Hunter Steve.
I
I think that's it for today, right?
think that's it. Yeah.
We are so excited to continue with this rewatch, but we will not have another rewatch episode
Nope.
next week because we have a very special conversation that we'll be having with a
Yep.
special guest. So stay tuned for more details about that. And the next episode that we will be watching will be chapter 5, which what's the title for chapter 5? Oh, I should have known. I saw it earlier. The Flea and the Acrobat.
Oh, good one. That's a good one.
It is the funeral. I said that like it's gonna be the funeral. The Flea and the Acrobat will be our next rewatch, and you can look forward to that in 2 weeks from now.
Woo.
Definitely come talk to us on social media about how you are enjoying the rewatch episodes. Let us know what you think, any theories. Find us on social media, Skull Rock Broadcast. I'm Steady Stories. Stacy is Stay Still Reviews. And until next time, over and out.
Over and out.
Eddie, I'm not sure I love the idea of you driving.
Oh, I'm starting to suck her. Harrington's got her. Don't you, big boy?
And we are back.
We're back.
Welcome to the secret segment, the secret steady segment. As you know, or you may not know, but we do this secret segment at the end to talk about fan fiction for Steve Harrington and Eddie Munson for the most part. And we just know that fan fiction is not for everybody. So if you are not into that, you can turn us off and we'll see you next week. But if you are and you want to follow along with our conversation, or you just like to continue to hear us talk, we don't judge.
No judgment. But if you're
we're
here to
we're going to talk
play,
about we're going to
let's get
talk
our
about
steady
what
on.
we've been reading this week. So Stacy, please enlighten me. What have you been reading this week?
Oh, girl. Oh, girl. So I literally like sped through this story. It was from Forest Hearts.
Ooh, yeah, they're great.
And they wrote this wonderful story called In My Head, I See a Supercut of Us, where basically it's in like kind of, takes place like the same events happened at the end of season 3, but season 4 hasn't happened yet. And Chrissy and Eddie are good friends, and she's basically like dating a cult member, and they're going to go to this like ritual night where they have to do a sacrifice. And at first he's like, they're gonna kill a goat, and she's like, no, we just have to throw something into the fire and make a wish. And he like humors her, goes along. They have to throw something into the fire, and he does it, and it's just like a notebook full of like, one shots and like kind of like fantasies that he had about Steve Harrington, his secret crush. And he makes a wish that's kind of like, at first he wants to wish that whatever Chrissy wished would come true. And it's like the cult member knows what he was thinking. And he's like, no, be selfish, make the wish. So he's like, I just hope that, if Steve Harrington ever found out I was gay, he'd be okay with it. And next thing you know, Steve picks up the boys from Hellfire Night and he gives Eddie a ride home. And they kind of like vaguely know each other. And as soon as he drops Eddie off, as soon as Steve starts driving home, he gets this like super, super smutty vision in his head of him being fucked by Eddie. And it's super graphic. And it's like to the point that he has to like pull over and jerk off because he just cannot get it out of his head. And the whole night, it's just weird fantasy after weird fantasy. And he has no idea where this is coming from because up until that moment, he thought he was straight. He never thought of Eddie that way. And they just keep getting more and more graphic. And the next day, he kind of almost like, is like, so did anything weird happen, Eddie? And Eddie realizes like, oh my God, did my wish come true? Because the only time the visions go away is when they're right next to each other. And that's when, Steve is like, maybe I'm not straight. And it is just fan-fucking-tastic. It is smutty as hell. It's very hot. There's definitely some drama that goes along with it, but it was one of the few stories that I could not stop reading. Cannot recommend it enough. It was a great story. And I read that, and then I just started Blinking Red Light by Cupe's Not Cute, which is basically Eddie lives at the end of season 4, but he is going to probably be sent away for life in prison because the government can't quite clear him unless they fake his death and put him in the witness protection agency, and he doesn't want that. So Owens is like, well, how about this? And Steve suggests to poor Eddie, he goes, we're going to have to make a sex tape and show that we were filming it the night Chrissy died. And Eddie's like, say what? So I'm yet to finish that, but it's just been smutty hotness, and it's been wonderful, Megan.
That sounds great.
What have you been reading?
Yeah, so I have not read a lot this week because I've been in podfic mode.
Ooh, what have you been working on?
We did work on Take the Money and Run.
Yep.
So I finished up editing chapter 5 and released that. So that came out this week. And that had been recorded for a while, but I had to finish it up. And then I had chapter 6 had been recorded a while also, but Stacy and I had not finished editing it. So, and Stacy and I had not finished talking about it yet. So we just recorded that last night. So I'm excited to finish that up and put it out there for everyone. I also recorded chapter 7, so I have to edit that. So I'm going to try to get some more chapters of Take the Money and Run out, and loving that. It's our favorite fic, obviously, because we're, doing podcast episodes about it. But I have some other stuff that I'm working on, so I won't spoil anything, but I'm trying to record a couple fics. I'm doing this like podfic event where it's like it's called Voice Team. But I'm on a team and we get like points for like working on podfics and everything. So it's one of my goals to record some of my favorite authors. So I really want to record a Dura fic. I want to record an Onion Chiver fic. So yeah, I'm gonna work on some good ones. So stay tuned for some more podfics this month. It'll be fun.
Can't wait.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it. I've been in recording mode and not reading a ton, but yeah, I will definitely keep you guys posted on that.
Woohoo!
And yeah, so I don't think we'll do another secret segment on our episode for next week just because we're recording it this weekend. So we won't have anything new to put out for that next week. So maybe look for another bonus episode here or there, and we'll check back in with you for our secret study segment again in 2 weeks as well. So yeah, we are always so happy to chat. And until we meet again, over and out.
Over and out.